Hello, listeners. Welcome back. I am Nicola Volpi. This is the Lost in Postulation podcast. And this week, I am not joined by Neil Fitzpatrick. I am flying solo. Neil has left me. He's gone off on a well-deserved holiday. So we've decided here on Lost in Postulation to adopt some MBA load management tactics to ensure that Neil is at his postulatory peak coming into this summer season. He's left for Singapore and Bali, exploring the southeast of Asia. Very curious to see what postulations he comes back with from that trip. I myself am a big fan of Singapore, not such a huge fan of Bali, so let's see what Neil says. For this week, given Neil's absence, what I've done is I've mashed up an archive on a specific topic which we've actually been covering almost since the inception of the podcast, which is the rivalry of the past year and a half between Chris Rock and Will Smith. Everything for us started in episode 3, where I asked Neil to postulate his way through a scenario where he would be stuck on a plane between the two rivals, Chris Rock and Will Smith, and would have to bring about peace between them. We then went through all of Neil's scenarios in a subsequent episode, which you'll also hear on this, got some listener postulations, and then, to our surprise, earlier this spring, Chris Rock released a Netflix special where he addressed the topic, and we were able to kind of bring everything to a nice conclusion and also have a bit of a view on the current state of comedy and Neil's actual stand-up endeavors from a past life. So I hope you enjoy what we've put together. What you will notice, however, is that the audio quality gets progressively better and better throughout those clips from different episodes, which is very much testament to the journey we've been on as a podcast. We'll probably be back next week together, recording live, Neil and myself, with a mailbag of listener postulations. We have kind of a backlog of those, so we wanted to include a bunch of those. It's great to see everyone engaging, in particular with the Google reviews, sending us in their Google reviews. We have a few very funny ones to discuss and postulate on next week. As always, feel free to reach out to us, send us any postulations you might have, feedback, thoughts, comments. You can tweet at us at @inpostulation. You can email us, that's lostinpostulation@gmail.com. Now, before I let you off into the episode, please remember to rate or review us in the app of your choice. It really helps to grow the podcast. Now sit back, relax. You won't miss Neil too much because he's in all of these recordings, and enjoy your postulatory experience. What you will be doing is going on what is one of the longest flights in the world from Singapore Changi Airport to New York City.
Which is a JFK, or are we talking Newark?
I think it's Newark, and it's 17 hours and 50 minutes
a bit long.
of time, right?
A little bit long.
And you will be sitting. It's an old configuration of a plane.
No,
so it's 3 and 3, and you have the middle seat between two historic rivals of your choosing. And essentially to get your paycheck and to avoid your own prison time, you need to bring about peace between these two people.
Why did prison?
It escalated. It's the Singaporeans. They tipped off the guys in New York, and your New York is North Jersey. So
yeah. I thought I might be making some money out of this, but now I'm going to jail if I don't.
Tables have turned.
Okay, geez.
So we'll set it up where you choose, and then we'll see how it evolves. Right?
Absolutely. I'll bring a report for the next episode.
So you get to choose. The first pair are Stephen King and James Patterson.
Oh, bringing back Stephen. Now,
they hate each other.
Is it true? Yeah.
Especially Stephen towards James Patterson.
Yeah. We have quotes to back this up?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah? We do. So King calls James Patterson a very successful but not very good writer. Because Stephen King is adamant about the fact that he writes all his own stuff, whereas Patterson is essentially a brand where he does an outline and he has co-writers and he's very open about it.
Yeah.
Patterson takes King's criticism quite lightly.
Okay.
But Stephen King is quite hard on him.
There's something cringe about those like one-sided rivalries, where like the other is like, there's some
complex there.
Yeah. Now the only thing is, I can't take this one, I think, because I don't know enough about Patterson to really
Okay, that's
to
fair
drive
enough.
at home, right?
That's fair enough.
As much as I would love to sit next to Stephen, I think let's see what else we got, and
Yeah.
I'll come back. Yeah.
The other one is Kanye West.
Oh.
Not against the world. We could have done that, but
would've
it's
been
Kanye
good.
West against Taylor Swift.
Oh. Geez, I don't envy anybody on that.
That's a beef that's gone on for now, 13
it's gone
years
through
or something.
a few really weird twists and turns as well. Jeez.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna wait to see what the other option is, but I feel terrible about that one. But okay, let's see.
Another one is Elton John, Sir Elton, and Madonna.
No way, they have
A
a beef.
long-standing beef, apparently.
Huh.
Yeah.
I feel like that's one you could probably solve on that flight, like because they're so great, they're well popular that none of them have like, at least as far as I know, they haven't like directly, called each other. Have they? I don't know. Like
There's some Elton quotes which we can, delve
doesn't like-
into if you choose to resolve
Does
that
not.
conflict.
does not care for Madonna. Jeez, and vice versa. That's a shocker because he seems like a quite friendly dude.
Yeah,
and,
easy to work with, big parties, invites everyone, but yeah.
Okay, but Madonna.
Yeah,
So
except Madonna.
are these my choices?
No. So you have two more,
great,
just in
okay.
case. So
Good.
Cardi B and Nicki Minaj.
No, I thought they were friends. No.
Well, they were. Then they started calling each other out, and it escalated to the point where apparently Cardi B threw a shoe at Nicki Minaj, and they haven't patched that up.
No,
So
that's when it's
there's a lot
serious.
to delve into there, apparently.
I have to. I'm going to be careful, not to be too disparaging, but I just would like to say that I don't think I'm the right person for this job.
Okay.
I don't think I will deliver the results that are expected.
Okay.
In this particular setup.
And that's fair. You need to know your limits because remember the downside of this is you end up in a Jersey prison,
Exactly. I just can't
potentially
see
extradited to Singapore.
which is even worse. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just can't see those two ladies turning around and saying, "Neil, you did a great job patching up our rift here." So I'm actually getting a little concerned because we've been through 4 groups and I don't feel confident about any. But okay, let's see.
So your conflict resolution skills, which you've been honing over the years, might
would
come in
think.
handy with this 5th duo:
Okay.
Will Smith and Chris Rock.
Yeah, I think I see this, right? Because they're both, at the end of the day, I think reasonable guys, right? I know Will is right on the edge of reasonable, let's say. But I think by the end of the 17 hours, we'll be cracking jokes, laughing away. That one I think I can manage. However, of course, I'll need to take this away and really, pressure test it.
You'll need to ruminate a bit and
postulate even. Yeah.
postulate, exactly. And then we can pick up on it on the next episode.
I'm going to go so far as to say lock it in.
Lock
Let's
it
do
in. So Singapore to New York City.
Yep.
Will Smith on one side, Chris Rock on the other. They still haven't patched things up.
Yeah. Let's assume. And I also
They're not ready to talk. Apparently, Chris isn't ready to talk to him yet.
Oh, really? Is that?
Yeah.
And that's the case still? Okay.
Yeah, apparently.
I'll need to deep dive a little bit into like the full backstory here, but I'll also need to postulate as to why we're in Singapore on our way to New York. Maybe that's a small detail.
Yeah.
But I'll come with a full story ready.
How does it feel?
It doesn't feel fantastic, I'm going to be honest. But I thinking back to last episode, I really jumped at this one as the one I wanted to do. And as soon as I started actually thinking about it, I instantly regretted it because if you get into the specifics of it, which I have done, I've now like been a bit of a celebrity gossip pop culture nerd for the last a couple of days, just getting into it. And my hopes are not super high, let's say. I also would like to caveat that I'm not going to even attempt to explain or postulate why it is that I'm going to get arrested if I don't solve this. So I don't think there's like a real world scenario where that is the case, but I do think I can postulate as to how I end up in this scenario, let's say, and we can get into that.
Okay.
So without further ado, should I just rattle
take
away?
over? Tell us.
Okay, so genuinely, this is not even too far off the beaten track. I do want to go to Singapore at some point, right?
Great place.
I think I've never been. It looks great. I played a lot of GeoGuessr during COVID, and you can always tell Singapore because it's like beautifully modern, super green, tropical foliage, clean. Their road signs are also very particular, so that's a giveaway. They drive on the left. Anyway, all that aside, Singapore looks great. I haven't been there other than virtually, and I could see myself being there even in the next year.
I think you would like it.
I think I would. I love Japan, so I think it's like not a million miles, and obviously very different, but still, a huge experience for someone like me to go and see. So let's say I go there for holiday purposes, and meanwhile, Chris and Will are both there for 2 unrelated reasons. One of them's filming, the other one is doing like a humanitarian something in Southeast Asia, and maybe it's Will who's doing this humanitarian stuff, and Chris is doing he's doing
some Adam Sandler movie, grown ups.
One for them, not one of his passion projects, let's say. Anyway, we are booked to get back to JFK. Then I'm on some kind of worldwide trip, and I'm flying economy, by the way, just to be clear. Like, me and Yura would have scraped together the money.
I think you were going to Newark, actually.
Oh, Newark, sorry, correct. And that's because she's never been to New York. We want to we want to do that next, right? So we're sitting in the departure lounge, and there's a little announcement where it's like, "Can Mr. Fitzpatrick please come to the desk? We have a seating issue." And long story short, I get upgraded, right? They're like, we have one in first class for you, actually. Oh, wow. And if you would like, we can only offer it to you. We can't offer it to your girlfriend, and we know that's a big inconvenience. And I'm just like, no, it's fine. Just go. So I get upgraded, right? And then I've never flown first class, but my understanding is that they board them first and separately, and it's all very nicely done. So anyway, we board first class, and I go to sit down, and who's sitting to my immediate side but Chris Rock, and I'm like, whoa,
it's a cramped first class.
Very because it's not those like cabins, where it's like one of those real maybe they even make an announcement about that actually, where they say just due to some of the issues with logistics, we've had to use an older airline for this one. We deeply apologize. We'll do our best to make sure it's comfortable, blah blah blah, but it is going to be a 17-hour flight on an old configuration, right? So I genuinely in this situation would play it very cool. So I'm not going to, be, oh my God, I'm a huge fan. I wouldn't even acknowledge that it's him. I'd just be like, hey, sorry. I treat him like anyone else, right? Then I sit down, buckle the seatbelts, maybe take out a phone game or something. And who sits down to my right? William Smith, or Will, as he prefers. And I'm just,
can't believe your eyes.
I cannot believe this. And then I get a little text on my phone being like, this is the US government. We need you to resolve this conflict for the good of the US economy. We need you to resolve this conflict before you land. We've also found that you are a suspect in a murder case or something.
Yeah, and you made some infraction, right?
Exactly. So the FBI is like, you either fix this or you're going down.
Right.
Anyway, God, this is a detailed setup. Anyway, so we take off. I have my mission now, which is to resolve this conflict between these two gentlemen by the time we land, 17 hours. So I did some research on this conflict, the slap, right? And you mentioned actually, I think it was the first episode, that Will has been on Trevor Noah recently. He did a long interview on Trevor Noah, and I suffered through the whole thing.
Half an hour, right?
It was mostly nonsense and just like total, self-congratulatory. I'm so great. Look at this amazing movie I did.
Did you count how many times he says,
Someone else did. It was 97.
Ah, okay, so, there you go.
And I think that speaks to his current mental state, actually. So we'll come back to that. But in general, I found that interview, like everything else he's done since then, to be kind of perfunctory and just kind of going through the motions of what you should do when you've done something like this. I do think he regrets it, because I would regret it if my career was tanked over something I did impulsively, but like only to that extent, right? I think probably potentially deep down he's like, yeah, well, he should have kept his wife's name out of his mouth. Like he probably still thinks that. Anyway, my current assessment of the situation, looking at Will and how he's behaving in that interview and everything since, is that he's a shadow of his former self, right? He's like, he's lost his confidence completely. He's like saying, every 3 words, which to me suggests that is that phrase of like, are you with me? Are you listening? Are you, is this making sense? Which is not
insecure, right?
Yeah, it's not Will. Like it's not what he's like. So he's not in a good place. And one thing he did say in the Trevor Noah interview is like, you never know where someone is in their head. And that night I was going through something and blah, blah, blah. And I'm willing to kind of let that slide. I'm actually not going to make much of a judgment as to the right or wrong of it. All I'm saying is I think it's highly likely that the guy was not in a healthy mental state then, and probably still isn't in a particularly brilliant place, right? Putting that to one side, Chris Rock has been weirdly quiet on this, and I think he knows exactly what he's doing. And he even referenced that recently. He was doing a stand-up show, I think, in September of this year, and somebody he takes questions from the audience, a bit like how we saw the lads do it. Dave Chappelle do it here in Copenhagen. They do the show and then they kind of take questions from the audience. So he got a question about the slap, as I'm sure he does every time he does this, and he said something to the effect of, "Guys, you paid for these tickets, but you didn't pay that much. I'm not getting into it here. I'm going to talk to Netflix about that," or something like that. He said it as a joke, but a lot of truth is said in jest, and I actually think he's going to have a documentary at some point, which is like Chris got slapped. Everybody slaps Chris. Something along those lines.
Produced by him.
at least in part, like he's going to have a big deal with Netflix where they will buy exclusive rights to his take on it, basically. And he'll talk through it and how deeply it affected him, and maybe they get Will on, or, you know, whatever, right? Yeah. But I think he knows that this is the side of, what's the phrase? Like, he knows what side his bread is buttered, basically. He's like, I can't go talk about this now because the way I can make the most money from it is by taking it later, you know?
Okay.
I do also think, though, that he's not like massively torn up about it. Like, personally, I think he's like, it was a really shit thing that someone did. Oh, sorry, maybe I shouldn't. We can bleep that out. But
we've already been rated as explicit.
Oh yeah, true. Yeah, that's not changing. So it was a bad thing that he did, and I do think, though, that like he's a big boy and like he's probably emotionally far past that at this point, and he's just kind of biding his time as to when to accept the apology and whatever.
Okay.
And that's where I think I'm going to exploit in this strategy. So I know this was a long lead in, but here we go.
Love it. Insightful.
So part one of my strategy is in hours. This is a 17-hour flight, by the way. So let's say the first 2 hours is pure ice breaking, where I'm not going to have either guy interact with each other. I'm sure they're aware that they're there, but they're not going to talk to each other. Right. So I'm going to keep to myself. I'm going to focus on watching a movie or playing a phone game or something. And if I get a chance when they come with the tea or the coffee, I'm going to just like, you know, do like I would with a stranger. I'll just be like, oh, do you want something? No. Okay, cool. You know, just something like that. Keep it friendly, just to show I'm here to be friendly. I'm not here to, you know, ruffle any feathers, whatever. And if it ever comes to it where they raise it for some reason, if they're like, look at this, what were the chances, you know, I'll be like, oh guys, don't leave me out of it. You know, I'm not, you know, sorry. I know what it is, but like, you know, let's just try and get through this fight. Right.
Right.
Here's where it gets where it gets interesting, right?
Okay, so you've broken the ice.
I've broken the ice and I've lowered their guard, right? They think that I'm not here to fix anything, right?
Right.
We wait for the first meal, right? So I guess on a 17-hour flight, there's going to be meal, sleep, meal, landing, something like that, right?
Yeah, probably in first class, even 3 or 4 meals.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the meal I find is my opening. That's when people's guards are even more down. You know, they're kind of more receptive to interacting and what have you. So I'm going to make up that I don't like a particular thing that has come in, right? So let's say we all get served spaghetti bolognese. I don't know what. Like, I think at first class it's probably a bit fancier than that, but spaghetti bolognese, right? Okay, yeah. With a bit of like parmesan cheese or whatever.
Lovely.
In a little packet.
Wow.
And then
packet.
Yeah, because then it's you know, it's an airline. They gotta prepackage these things.
Right.
So I'm going to turn to Will. And I go, Will, do you want this parmesan? I'm not going to say his name. I'm going to say, hey, sorry, do you want this parmesan? I'm okay. He's probably going to be like, no, I'm good. I'm like, okay, no worries. And I'm like, Chris, by the way, sorry, do you want just extra parmesan? I don't know if you like parmesan.
Okay.
And he may take it or he may not, right? But this is now me just extending an olive branch, just opening up the door to potential dialogue.
Parmesan diplomacy.
Exactly. As we know, it's very effective. But here's where it ramps up a gear. We're now like 3 or 4 hours in, right? We're coming up to the sleep time, but it's going to be movie time pretty soon. And I'm assuming we're doing it now, right? Which is the 20th of December. That's when we're flying. I'm sure there's going to be a Christmas movie on the screen available. And I'm hoping that A Muppet's Christmas Carol is the one that's on it. Now, that's very specific, but you'll see why. Because my whole angle in this is Will Smith is not in a good place mentally. Chris Rock is not necessarily fully aware of the depth of Will's, you know, heart, like how much he's suffering, basically.
Right. And
were he aware of that, he would, you know, come to his senses and be like, "Look, dude, don't worry about it. Like we go way back. It's all fine, you know." So, putting it long story short, we put on a Muppet's Christmas Carol on my screen. Right, I start watching it. The guys are doing their own thing, but just out of the corner of their eye, they're catching Kermit, they're catching all the characters, and they're like, "Oh, you watch? Oh, okay, cool." Anyway, I don't know how effective this is going to be. So as the movie goes on, I start to cry, right? And I'm going all in because remember, I'm going down. Like I'm really going down. If
we're like 5 hours into the flight now, or what? Okay,
exactly. So we're coming up to sleepy time on the flight, you know. So everyone's a bit tired. It's probably like 1 a.m. you know, Singapore time.
And you're super emotional.
I'm super emotional. So I start kind of like I do my best opera winning, you know, because all I need is one of the guys to go, hey man, are you okay? And I'll be like, no, it's fine. It's just such a sad movie how, you know, he could be so misunderstood and, you know, he acts out, he lashes out, you know, Ebenezer lashes out, but it's coming from a place of sadness, you know, and from a traumatic childhood and lots of other things, you know. And I don't mind which guy comes, because if Will turns to me and goes, hey man, are you okay? He'll be like, man, I went through something very similar recently. Don't worry, I hear you. And Chris is just going to overhear this, right? Yeah. And if Chris turns around and goes, "Hey, are you okay?" I'll be like, "Yeah, it's just, it's so crazy how people wouldn't forgive Ebenezer for some of his, So I'm going to play it whichever way, because I think that movie is like the perfect analogy to this situation, where we have someone who's acted out badly, but has done so because of trauma and a history of negative things, and needs to be forgiven in the spirit of Christmas, in the spirit of, So anyway, I'll leave that with them then. So we get through that weird movement. We all go to sleep, right? And everyone has their own little sleep, and it's fine. But then we wake up, and that's when I need to start like accelerating things a bit. So then I just go cards on the table from there. I'm like, guys, look, I'm just going to say it. Like, isn't it so ridiculous how this has all worked out, that like we're sitting each other, like we're just kind of call it, get it out there. And then I go back to the Christmas Carol thing, and I apologize for that. God, I didn't think this would go as long as it did. Sorry, I'm fully in it now.
Intriguing.
But then I bring it back up, and I go to Will, like, and it's kind of like what you had recently, Will, as well, right? And he'd be like, yeah, like totally. I also, had a really, really tough year, and I did take that out a bit on Chris, and Yeah, and he'll say, quite a lot. And Chris will be like, I don't, leave me alone, guys. Like, I don't want to talk about that. Anyway, more food comes. I do the food trick again. So I'm like, hey, does anybody want these carrots? I don't want them.
Oh, no, it's carrots. Okay.
Yeah, just trying to, get more interaction flowing. Yeah. But then in the last hour then, so we get the announcement being like, we'll be arriving to Newark Airport in 1 hour.
Tray tables up.
Everyone's kind of closing up. And then I'm like, you know what, guys? I think let's just put this aside. And like we're all big guys here. Like we've had a really nice evening here. You guys helped me through that time I was sad earlier on. Can we not just put this whole thing aside? And just I think it has to feel not significant. It has to feel kind of just kind of cursory. Like yeah, whatever. We're cool. We're fine.
Wow.
So even a little bit of social pressure from me, it's like, this will make me shut up if they can just say, yeah, man, we're fine. Don't worry. It's like, I'm the weirdo here, and I need them to feel like just by saying, yeah, then I'll go away, and I'll shut up,
Yeah.
So I'm going all in on just a bit of weird social pressure, a bit of weird kind of them feeling like they're helping me, that kind of stuff, And then eventually we land, they shake hands. I'm like, guys, it's been a pleasure. Glad we came to a good conclusion, and we leave.
Wow.
I think I walk out a free man of Newark Airport.
Wow, this is inspiring. I mean, sorry for my silence on
no,
on
literally,
my side
sorry for my
this,
extreme long-windedness. And
no, I'm inspired.
What started as a cursory, like, how do you do it? A 5-minute conversation has turned into, potentially 15 minutes. So deeply apologize to.
I think you've created a template here. I think in light of the holidays, I mean, listeners, take stock. I mean, think about where do you have certain conflicts where you might need to call up Neil Fitzpatrick yourself to get involved and mediate with Parmesan.
Parmesan mediation is totally an option. Muppet Christmas Carol mediation is also hugely strong, because remember, the Muppet Christmas Carol is the best visualization you'll ever get of bad behavior being corrected due to revelations and like epiphanies.
Wow.
So if there's anybody in your life that you're like, okay, I don't necessarily understand why they're being an asshole, just show them a Muppet's Christmas Carol, and you watch Muppet's Christmas Carol, and you'll start to understand why Ebenezer was acting the way he was.
Oh, I'll be all over the place.
Charles Dickens.
I mean, Charles Dickens.
And Jim Henson, obviously, and his amazing interpretation. But
Wow.
There you go.
Thank you for that. So you are now in North Jersey. You are a free man. You might never see Chris and Will again, but they might see each other again.
That's what matters. I think they can both bond over the fact that they had to sit next to me for those 17 hours, and they can laugh about it in future and say, remember that time we were on a flight and there's that weirdo with the Christmas movie? Like, that's what I'm banking on.
This is solid gold.
I love it.
Thank you for that, Christmas gift for all of us, the inspiration.
The least I can do.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
But we have had strong reactions to that, and none more so than Graham O'Hara, our good buddy back in Ireland. And he has been listening religiously since the start, back in the early days of last December. And he has actually sent in, and this is a format I didn't even think that we could do, but it actually makes perfect sense. He has sent in a voice note. We communicate often over WhatsApp using voice notes. And why not just include his postulation here on the show? So we're going to drop it in here now. And we're going to give our take on it straight after. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to the virtual voice note of Graham O'Hara.
Fantastic.
Hello, Nicola and Neil. Graham here, long-time listener, first-time voice note submitter. I wanted to send in, a response to something that was said on the pod. in a previous episode, it was a postulation by Neil around this scenario where he finds himself on a flight from Singapore to New York, where he's abandoned his girlfriend after receiving a first class ticket, just in a heartbeat, and he finds himself sat between none other than Chris Rock and Will Smith, kind of caught between a rock and a hard-bodied Will Smith, if you will. So he then receives a text from the US government, if I recall, saying that unless he can resolve their differences, he will be fingered for a murder. I imagine there's a few winky smiley faces in that message, because obviously he hasn't committed this murder, which just sort of makes the situation slightly worse. So that's his incentive. Now, speaking of incentives, right, he did also mention that Chris Rock has been very quiet about the whole situation, that Will Smith is on TV sort of trying to, smooth over his image and saying, loads, whereas Chris Rock's has been like, nope, not saying a word, joking that he'll do his big Netflix Meghan and Harry documentary one day. Now, I think that's key to why there's a massive flaw in the logic. So Neil talked about how he would sit there, watch Muppets Christmas Carol, he would offer the parmesan diplomacy and sort of just ingratiate himself to these people slowly while also not being involved, and then eventually he would say what he says, and then they all kiss and make up. Now, I think that it's actually possible to get those two to privately reconcile. I think it's all on Chris Rock to just say, hey man, I understand what you're going through, and while there's no justification to slap someone, we all do mad things when we're under pressure, etc., etc. It'd be a very beautiful thing. I think they'd land and it would all be great. However, I think Neil would walk off that plane thinking he'd done right, but there was one important detail, was that the US economy is struggling, which is the most important thing, right? Capitalism is under threat, consumerism, all that stuff. And what he needs to do is make them publicly reconcile for the good of the economy. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. I think they will privately reconcile, but there's too much incentive for Chris Rock to still do his Netflix program, which he has done nothing after the slap. So he needs to do that to get the money, and therefore the feud needs to publicly continue. And I don't think Neil can get around that. So since he's already going to go down for a murder, I think he may as well do the right thing. Now, I'm not saying which of the two he should murder, but murdering one of them would resolve the beef. Now, it's sort of like the train situation where you have a train coming down the track, and if it goes left, it kills one person. If it goes right, it kills multiple people, and you have the choice of sending it left or right. It's really hard to decide. So I'm going to leave it to the guys to postulate on which of Will Smith or Chris Rock dies. And there is an option C there. You can't just go up and crash the plane. I think they both die, and it's very unfortunate. And there's nothing like a celebrity death to really stir up an economy. Like, this is like, you think Morocco has soft power there with the World Cup and things like that. I think America, with its hard power, can flex its sympathy muscles there. And a sympathy dollar is a very strong market. So I think choose wisely there. But I just love to see a postulation or a repostulation on this with that particular detail sort of focused on. So I'll leave it back to you lads, the experts in these things. I am merely an amateur postulator, but I aspire to be like you guys one day, and I love what you do, and I keep doing what you're doing, and fair play, and slán a while.
Wow. Thank you, Graham O'Hara from Ireland. That is quite a counter postulation, and I mean, what this podcast will go down for is the Chris Rock, Will Smith conflict resolution. This just keeps going on. This is potentially the most that anything has ever escalated ever, like in the shortest period of time. Wow. 1 minute you're listening along to the story, and then it's like, oh, okay. And then, as we heard, oh, wow, okay. Yeah, I mean, from a logical perspective, and Graham, what you said makes a logical sense. I'm a bit awestruck, I have to say. You're lost for words here. Yeah, I really am. He really took your parmesan diplomacy and flipped it on the side of its head. And,
absolutely did.
propose something potentially much more sustainable in a sense.
Well, what I like about this postulation, if I can be so bold, is Graham has really dug into the context, the starting point of the postulation, and really solved it from there, you know, because he has said, okay, the US government is going to imprison me unless I solve this,
Right.
and their incentive is economic growth or prosperity, right? And that's it. He's like, if I don't solve that, then the thing's not solved.
Right.
Whereas when we talked about it, we were like, how do we get these two guys to be buddies again, you know? So it's an example of where the listener can, you know, more accurately or more, you know, scientifically, let's say, postulate in a way that is even more accurate to the definition of postulation.
Right. And he's really the results orientation is amazing.
It's
right?
It's ruthless.
Yeah.
I'll give it that.
Yeah.
It's not the strategy I would personally choose. And if he was here with us, I would probably ask, you know, is there a way that I can get away with this without actually, you know, like,
right?
Is it going to be a poisoning scenario? You know, I also wonder, even if by continuing this conversation, are we on the verge of breaching any federal laws? So I also want to, you know, stray on the side of caution here. But suffice to say, it is definitely a viable alternative if the strategy is simply to end the beef between these two guys publicly.
Yeah.
Well.
How about that?
I'm pretty happy with that, I have to say.
I'm happy with it.
Yeah, I think it's, you could argue a stop clock is right twice a day, and maybe it's a fluke, but I also can't take all the credit here because he did kind of say it himself. Like he made the joke about selling his story to Netflix. I do wonder if at that time he had already been in talks with Netflix. Like this was back in September or something that he said it. Probably he had...
The incident happened a year ago now, right? So that's kind of the timing of it.
It's Oscar's time again now, yeah.
Right.
So it seems like it's very much blown over. And I think Chris must have known that and you know, realized now's the time, Oscar season, right? You know, so maybe this has been in the tank for a while. But no better way to transition us into this topic than that quick look back to episode 4.
Yeah.
And the fact that we did indeed call it. So what we'd like to do a little bit here now is to get back into this topic. We've had it a long time ago, so it's time to revisit a little bit, particularly in light of Chris's new stand-up special.
Yes.
So, Nicola, you, sir, have watched the special.
I did indeed. I didn't watch it live. I watched it the next morning.
Which is eager, like seriously eager from your part, because it only came out a few days ago.
Exactly.
You were like wasting no time.
7:30 in the morning, Chris Rock.
Yeah.
With your breakfast.
Prime comedy time.
I highly recommend.
Absolutely. But on that point of highly recommending, do you highly recommend it? And please do give the listener your own thoughts.
I do. I think, and contextually, I recommend it even more, right? Given the journey, let's say, of the last year. First thing for me, Chris Rock, avid listener of the podcast, hopefully. Speaking to the man, I appreciate you. I'm a big fan. I've always been. I think you are one of the best stand-up comedians of your generation. You know, coming through that mid-90s SNL generation with the Sandlers, the Spades, the Farleys, etc. And now I'm going to stop talking to him because it gets a bit weird, right? I'm going to talk about him. He's managed, regardless of having made what I assume is significantly more money through his films, he has actually kept to his craft and also kept doing what he loves. And of those guys is one of the few that still, basically 30 years later, is popping up on stages and going on tours and doing his stand-up, even though it's one of the most difficult things to do, potentially least rewarding also from a financial perspective, etc. So just, I really appreciate that. Now, in terms of the whole incident with Will and how that went down last year, and we followed up a lot on it, I think the way Chris Rock has handled it, now, whether, you know, we won't do any moral judgments on the quality of the joke, whether he was in the right and the wrong, but beyond that, after the incident, I think the way he's handled himself has been incredibly a class act, if you will.
Yeah.
Super mature, gentleman to an extent, kept quiet, didn't kind of extend this beef or call out any things. And then he gets this Netflix deal. And I love how he handled that, because what did he not do? He didn't do the Oprah tearjerker interview. And I love Oprah, but there's a time and a place, right? He also didn't do the get a camera crew to follow me around in my personal life, 6-hour Netflix special like some of our royal friends have done. What did he do instead? He stayed true to his craft, and he said, look, I'm going to do what I do best, and I'm going to do a stand-up special and actually trial something totally new out for Netflix, which is another very interesting component here.
Well, is it new for Netflix? I wonder. Like, what's new about it for Netflix?
So the new part isn't like having a stand-up special, but to actually stream it live. So this was live television for Netflix.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Okay.
Which is interesting because on the one hand, the cynic in me says, "Hey, Netflix is clutching at straws. You know, they're going for live." On the other hand, like when the numbers come through of that, I think it could be something worth for them exploring, not just obviously in the niche of stand-up comedy, but with other things as well.
Yeah, this industry, I only recently learned the name of it actually. It's like simulcasting, you know?
Yeah.
Where it's like you don't get to go to the event, but you get to watch it at the same time as it happens, right? And I think when I heard about that concept, I would have been very bullish about it actually. And it said something like, wow, this is the future of entertainment, you know, and isn't it going to be great when we can all go to watch the simulcast of stuff? But this was like a few years ago when this started, I think, maybe just pre-COVID. And I have to say, it hasn't really taken off as a concept. Like I do remember seeing cinemas selling tickets to watch the, you know, Berlin Philharmonic from Copenhagen, you know, like this
that
kind
was
of
really
stuff.
big for a while.
Yeah,
that you'd
exactly.
go in and see like theater.
But did you ever go to it?
No, I never did.
Yeah, me neither. And I think that's the problem. Like, it's just not such a good sell. And like, you didn't watch Chris Rock live just now either, right? Like
No.
Whatever it was about the proposition, it just didn't pull you in. You're like,
that's
okay.
a fair point.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, like, it's great that they're trying something and maybe it's the future, but if I had to put money on it now as to like, will this particular thing, this concept take off as a new way of consuming performance? I'm like, nah, maybe not. Yeah.
Probably only for like kind of that blockbuster event with all that baggage as this one was, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, back to Chris, you know, he sells out this venue in Baltimore, by the way. Awesome that he did it in Baltimore. Big fans on Lost in Postulation.
Huge, yeah.
Of the city of Baltimore. He sells this out and he comes onto the stage. He picks up his microphone and he gets into it.
Yeah.
And essentially those first 20 minutes, he made me laugh quite a bit. That's the point, folks. I genuinely enjoyed it. The middle part was more kind of a transportation where I thought it lacked a bit in originality of the jokes. But I mean, he's there for an hour talking nonstop, playing off of the audience. So that's, you know, bound to happen, I think. And then only in those last 10 minutes, and I think technically it's just those last 7 minutes, he gets into the incident. And there's like this steady crescendo. And I think just the way he did it was quite funny. I think he struck the right balance. He also wasn't petty. He didn't seem, you know, out for revenge, whatever. And without any spoilers, then he ends with this final one-liner, which results in a mic drop, standing ovation, and then you have "Watch the Throne" by Kanye and Jay, you know, in the background, and he's just taking in all the applause. And it was refreshing to see somebody, and definitely not his best performance. Don't get me wrong, because I mean, definitely not. And there's probably something in there about stand-up comedy, like, you know, how difficult it is and contextual, whatever. But it was just great to see, refreshing, like I said, a master of his craft, just owning a stage like that, and answering even to kind of this beef with comedy the way he does it, without making it a 1 hour roast on Will Smith.
Yeah.
Because that would have been too easy, actually. And that's what why I respect Chris Rock and how he approached this.
I think that I buy that argument, right? So I love that you've correctly pointed out that he had many ways to go about this, and this was probably the best of many. And I don't know how much a role he personally would have had in choosing that versus, say, doing a 6-episode macro series through Netflix, which I don't think anyone would have loved. But I have a further postulation on this, though, and maybe it's not so much against Chris, and I haven't seen it, so I'm not going to get into that specifically. But you mentioned the words there of like not making it too easy, right? That he didn't take the easy route of just roasting Will for an hour, right?
Right.
But tell me what you think of this, right? I postulate, I put to you, sir, that there are actually two types of stand-up comedy. There's stand-up comedy where you know who you're going to see and pay big money to see them, and the stand-up where you don't know who you're going to see and you're like, I'm just going to hopefully laugh. Like, let's see, it's an open mic, let's see what happens, right? And I would put to you that those two things are drastically different media / events / experiences, right? And I've been to enough big name comedy gigs. I've seen Ricky Gervais. We saw Jon Stewart. We saw Chappelle, right? Yeah. Paid big money for that, or at least like somewhere in the region of 80 to 90 euro kind of thing for those
concert money.
Exactly. So there's two things that I think change the dynamic there. Number one is just sunk cost fallacy, that you've paid big money to get here. So you're going to make sure yourself that you're going to laugh your ass off. Like you're going to be quite sympathetic, I think, to everything that's said. It's unusual, I think, that you would pay 90 or 100 euro to go to a comedy gig and just sit there stone-faced being like, don't like this at all. Second of all, it's the celebrities who you're just happy to see no matter what.
Right.
And that celebrity can therefore come out on stage and say basically anything. Like, I really think Chris Rock is one of those people that could come out and just be like, so I had cornflakes for breakfast today, and that crowd would go, wow, cornflakes, like just because that
also his cadence and how he says things is you know,
and true, he is naturally gifted and funny, like for sure. But I also think that room full of people are probably the most sympathetic audience in the world, and his job therefore of making them laugh is like actually not super hard for him, I would say.
Okay, sure.
Not taking away anything from him as a comedian, he's one of the greatest, as you say, of all time. But I think he falls now into that same category that Ricky Gervais does when he does these stadium tours, which is like people are just happy to see him, and he can literally say whatever, and people will be like,
like with aging musicians is often the case, right?
Sympathetic audiences basically is what I mean. And it's so far removed from where they came from, where Chris Rock himself probably came from, which is those early days where no one knows who you are, and it's make them laugh or you're off, like you're off, you're done, you know?
Right.
So I think, but my only reflection is what I'm sick of, right, is when I watch a special, as they're called now, you know, these 1 hour specials, it seems like more of it is being taken up by applause than laughter, right? Where the comedian will say something just like, yeah, that's why I don't like the da-da-da. And the crowd goes, ha ha ha, clap, 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 clap. And then as we're here sitting at home just like, okay, I agree, but let's go on, you know?
Yeah.
They become these kind of applause fests or like worship fests or whatever.
It's a celebration rather than, you know.
Exactly. It's not really comedy. So I think my hesitancy to watch it is coming from there, actually. So I'm sorry, I'm going to hand back over to you now to give you something to react to there.
I think that's a very fair point, especially when you talk about that, you know, in the audience. And I think you and I, we had that. So we went to, it must be now more than 4 years ago, right? We went to see Chappelle and Stewart. And we had that where the first hour was Stewart, if you remember. To me, it was almost a bit lazy comedy at the time. You know, Trump was present, and he basically did an hour at Trump, right?
Great job.
And there was some funny stuff there, but there it was more like that applause rather than laughter thing from the audience, right? Chappelle comes on, absolutely kills it, and I think some of the hardest I've laughed in my life, right?
Sure.
It can go both ways. Now, on this Chris Rock one, yes, the crowd in Baltimore, that's one thing. But I had no vested interest to be laughing in my kitchen while I'm having breakfast.
Yeah.
Right? From home. And that's how I measured it. And like I said, I genuinely laughed those first 15, 20 minutes and those last 10. And that part in between was more what you're talking about, I think. Where probably I'm not being harsh enough on that part in between either because it's Chris Rock.
Exactly. You're like, well, the legend is here. You know, like you're just happy that he's producing content whatsoever, you know?
I think it's fair. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. It's a good shout. It's a good shout.
I'm proud of that. Yeah.
You're nailing a few today, huh?
Yeah, a few postulations. Yeah.
No, absolutely. But I think it's what it really got me thinking about, because I hadn't watched, you know, stand up in a while, but it's also like, and like I said, like how hard this thing is to do. And I know actually you've had some experience in the field, so maybe you can tell us firsthand.
Well, I think it's good to get into it because what I was hoping to use this section for is basically a massive encouragement to anybody with even the slightest inclination to ever doing it. Just freaking find a way to do it. Don't care what age you are, what part of what life stage you're in. Please find a way to get to an open mic, write 5 minutes of material and do it. Because honestly, probably one of the best things I ever did in terms of like life experiences, right? I won't get into the whole story of it, but basically I ended up doing it almost unplanned. I was with some friends who were doing a comedy show in Edinburgh, and the support act dropped out and they needed anyone to open the show. And I was like, I guess I could try it.
And this is how long before having to hit the stage?
about 3 hours, 4 hours.
Oh, wow.
So the adrenaline is dumping at this point, and we together, it wasn't me writing it, me and that group of guys, we just kind of threw together a few jokes, 5 minutes of stuff, and 5 minutes is like 3 minutes because you have to have time for laughing and transitions and whatever. So
okay, yeah.
But anyway, getting on the stage, when it actually came down to it, was like the scariest, the most adrenaline pumping thing ever. But it went ridiculously well. I don't know why to this day. But what happened then was for the following like 4 hours, I would say, for the entire rest of the night, I was on the highest of highs you literally, like nothing beats it. And
like
I've tried many other things. I've had things go well, say in a work context, or I've had, concerts that go well, and then like nothing comes close to this. You come off the stage feeling like there's nothing that I can't do. It's like phenomenal. And since then, before you do it, you always feel I could never do it. No way. Like, no way. What if it goes wrong? What if it goes wrong? And having done it once, your perspective shifts a bit, at least for me, where it's like, who cares? Like, yeah, it goes wrong, whatever. Like, I survive, I'm fine. And that same realization gets carried over to every part of your life then after, at least for me. Maybe I sound like some kind of a self-help guru here, but like, all I'm saying is...
you are a self-help guru.
I guess I'm becoming one slowly but surely. But my point, I guess, is like getting to a point of jumping into something that can go massively wrong. And even if it does go massively wrong, which I've also had in subsequent gigs, it did go wrong. But what you realize is nothing matters. Like it does not hurt at all. Like you an hour later are back to normal, and therefore every other time you go to present in work, or you go to like do something big out in the world in whatever context, like say when I was at your wedding, I was doing like a kind of an MC kind of role, right? No nerves. I was just like, it's gonna be fine. Like it'll be like
you play the audience too, right? Like
100%. And like you learn that, I guess, through more time than I've spent doing stand-up. But like, I guess the key thing I wanted to land is just like, I'm sure there's someone listening who has always at the back of their mind thought they could see themselves doing it, but oh God, it would be so scary, and oh God, I don't know if it would go well. But all I'm saying is there is so much bad stand-up out there right now. The worst case scenario, you'll just be adding one more to the pile, and best case scenario, you'll be coming away with a phenomenal experience that may even like transform you a little bit.
Okay.
So you made the point there just before now that this was something difficult to do, and I fully agree. It's very, very difficult, but also massively rewarding.
Yeah, it's a high risk, high reward, right? I mean,
but is it high risk? Like, what's the risk? Like,
no, I mean, if you're probably in a room full of people you don't know, right? Yeah. So it's just your ego bruised for a few hours if you get.
I don't see any
booed
risk
off or however it works, right? Like,
you'll never get booed off. No. What you'll get is silence, right?
Silence, which is worse.
Yeah,
in that context.
But even dealing with that will be invaluable to you, because imagine you say a joke and it ends on, and that's why the phone was on the table, and you're waiting for the big explosion of laughter, and it just never comes, right? So how do you deal with that moment? Like you now have to reach into yourself and find a way to get through this. And you'll develop that skill then by doing it once or twice or how many times. And that same skill will stand to you in many, many other times. When you're left without words, when you're left without any idea what to do next, you'll draw upon whatever experience you've had in that painful moment, right?
That's resilience and agility, right? Like that's 100%. What it comes down to.
I really think so. Because if you go through life without taking these horrible, painful moments, like you won't grow, you won't get better. So like, God, I didn't expect to get so philosophical, but like, I really think if there's anyone out there who wants to try, please do. I think you won't regret it.
I think that's a great shout. And I don't think, like, for me, for example, it's never an idea that's, popped in my head. Like, and I think there might also be a generational aspect, I don't know, but where going to the comedy club isn't what it used to be.
I think it's dead, basically, as a thing, because the internet has proven to be just way better.
You just go on YouTube and find whatever you want there, or
and it's better. Like I can go. I know pretty much that if I want to laugh, I can be laughing in the next 30 seconds for free. I don't need to go pay €50 to go to a comedy club and drag myself into town for a maybe hit or miss experience, by the way. Like, and remember, as I said, like the level of comedy, especially in non-English speaking countries, is very patchy. Like you may have a good time, you may have an absolutely terrible time, and you will be sitting there wondering, why didn't I just go to YouTube and watch?
It could end up being a really shitty night, right?
Oh, 100%. Like, it's a complete dice roll. Like, and that does make it all the sweeter when it's good. Like when you stumble across some new talent and you're like, whoa, this was amazing. But for every one of those, there's about 20 people who have self-selected to make their life about being a comic. And unfortunately, aren't going to make it, you know. But
Yeah.
that's just part of the deal, and we move on. But
Yeah. In this theme, actually, as we love to throw out recommendations, did you ever see Scorsese's King of Comedy with De Niro?
I didn't, and I really need to, because we saw Joker. I think we saw Joker together, and
very inspired
apparently
by
heavily
that.
inspired, right?
Yeah.
But no, I didn't see it.
Yeah, and that was actually, at the time, that movie was just destroyed by critics, and Scorsese had basically done that, and something along the lines of the Jesus movie, Passion, along these lines.
Okay.
And that's when he then fell into this huge depression and was on coke and everything, and then Raging Bull kind of brought him back. But basically, that movie revisited now,
Yeah.
everyone loves it.
Absolutely.
And it's a vintage De Niro performance, but basically he plays this stand-up comic who starts stalking a guy played by Jerry Lewis, who's a comedian in the movie, and a lot of what you're talking about, you see a lot of that in the film, and I think it's masterfully done. So I just wanted to throw that out there as a timeless piece on the stand-up scene.
I'll check it out. I'll check it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you can't see yourself ever taking the plunge into the world of stand-up?
I mean, I don't know. Yeah, after what you've told me, you've planted the seed. That's
I think
for
so.
sure.
Because remember, it doesn't necessitate being funny to get a laugh on stage.
Right, that's the thing. Right?
What it necessitates is joke structure, right?
Timing. That's always the joke.
Timing is
right?
huge.
Yeah.
But then Dara O'Brien, a very famous Irish comedian, put it perfectly. He comes from a science background before he was, or debating and science background before he became a comic. And what his realization is that the thing that makes a joke funny for a stand-up is that the key word, the punch word, is the last word in the sentence. So the word that makes the thing a joke has to be last. And you can just do that. Like you can sit down with a funny idea and then reword the sentence so that the punch word comes last. And there you go. There you have a joke now.
Right.
And you can say that to an audience and they will laugh because the structure is set up to generate a laugh. If the punch word comes in the middle of the sentence, they won't laugh because they're still listening for the rest of the sentence. So it's like little realizations like that you can just hack, basically. Like you can science your way through writing a stand-up set, you know? And all you need is 5 minutes, right? They call it a tight five. So any comedy club, you know, with an open mic, you tell them I have 5 minutes, they'll be like, yeah, off you go.
Right.
What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah.
So yeah, go for it.
But that's crazy that you say 5 minutes and I'm sitting there, or that crowd is sitting there in Baltimore watching Chris Rock do that for 1 hour,
yes.
60 minutes.
And an hour is a very different beast, right? Like these comedians, even obviously Chris Rock is an absolute legend of the game, and I'm sure it's no problem for him. But most comedians, I think, when they put an hour together, it's like writing a novel. It's like a proper big piece of work.
And I imagine he has a writer's room as well.
For sure. He's a product of it. Like he is a company kind of at this point. Right. He would have a staff. But when you start out as a comedian, you're still working towards that 1 hour, right? And like being a novelist, you know, it's you on your own. Like you have to find it. And for every 5 minutes of material, there's probably 30 that didn't make the cut, right? So you really have to be like prolific, even if you're writing like crazy, to get to that level. And of course, I'm not saying everyone needs to go do that. I'm just saying try a 5 minute set, you know, because an hour is a whole other thing.
Look at that. You all of a sudden a pitch man for the comedy industry.
Yeah, but just don't expect to make money from it, because it's that's only going
Minor
one
detail.
way. Yeah, forget about it. Yeah. But you'll enjoy it. You won't mind about the money thing.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. If you say so. Well, listeners, there you have it. Our comedy guru.
What little I know, but passing on what I can. Do we have a closing take then on Chris and his work?
On Chris in general, or on this recent
I suppose
special?
To summarize on the special, you're kind of like, you like it, you think people should watch it, you're happy with it. Yeah.
I don't think anybody... Now, if you like Chris Rock, right, because that's the caveat. If you don't like that type of a bit raunchy comedy, stay away, right? Because it's always Chris Rock, right? You know what you're going to get. But if you're into that, I don't think anybody's going to go into it and say, give me that hour back, right?
Okay. Cool.
Well, listeners, let us know, and then you can come at me if that's not true. But I think definitely worth it, and you know, within the context, I think great. Now, if there's some great all-time Chris Rock performances that you can also find, you know, on YouTube and stuff, and that's just him at his best. Those I would definitely recommend.
So I suppose what you're saying is if you want to go watch some good Chris Rock, just go do that instead.
Yeah,
if you
I
want
think
to
that's
hear,
what I'm getting at. Yeah.
Exactly. And if you want to hear about the slap, you have to watch the last 10 minutes of this one.
Yeah.
And the rest you can take or leave.
Also, because the issue with this one, having been on Netflix, is you've probably already in the last couple of days, in whatever newspaper you read, have read probably the key punchlines.
It's such a shame.
Which is a shame, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the thing, like why a lot of the time when you go to watch these big comedy shows, they actually give you a bag into which to lock your phone.
Big
right?
fan of those. Yeah. I think that should be every event, everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But also, like, just extending that, I think also at concerts,
Yeah.
because you nowadays, like, and you hear a lot of artists talking about it, that they're just staring out into, 10,000 people with screens, and it's just like, and flashlights, and it's like people are actually watching you perform live, but through their phone.
But I was at a concert where I saw Tool in Dublin about a year ago, and it was extremely strict. They didn't take your phone off you, but they were like, you'll get one warning, and if we see you with your phone again, you are out of this gig.
Okay.
And they did not hesitate. Like, there was people behind us, in front of us, who, what happened was there was all these guys bouncers whose only job was to look into the crowd, and then if they saw a phone up, they would shine the torch directly into the phone lens, because you can't miss that if you're filming. You're like, whoa, okay. And then they didn't take the warning, and then the guys just in front of us did it again, and then they're like, you're out, guys. You were warned. Like, that's it. And then the great thing was, at the end of the gig, they played the last song, the encore. Maynard James Keenan comes out, the lead singer, and he says, okay, now you can start filming on your stupid phones. And then everyone's phone comes out for the last song.
Away.
Yeah. But at least that's a good compromise, where he was like, he knows that everyone wants to
knows this is 21st century.
Yeah, and everyone wants to get a shot to show they were there, and it's something to remember. I get it. And he picked a song that he's very confident in, so it's all fine. But I think that was spot on. It was like, enjoy the gig, don't film it, and then, maybe at the end, get a little clip.
Yeah. Listeners, you're there for a live performance. Enjoy it. Well, there you have it, listeners. For all of you that actually made it this far into the podcast, this is me recording live again. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to having you back for a new show next week. Send us all your postulations in the meantime. Tweet at us at impostulation. Email us lostinpostulation@gmail.com. So long, farewell, arrivederci.